Hi, I'm Mike Kelly from Project Healing Waters Omaha. And tonight we're doing a couple flies with Christmas colors. And then when we're all done, if anybody has anything to share, we'll go through that. So tonight is going to be the Spruce Dry fly and the Grizzly King Streamer. And they're both going to show some techniques that we haven't really gone over in a while. So for the flies, I will share. So the first one is going to be the Grizzly King Stream. Oh, wait, that says Spruce Dry fly at the top. I didn't change that. Sorry about that. Oh, I'm sorry. I saw a streamer and I switched gears on you. So I'm no longer confused. The first one will be the Spruce Dry fly. What I wanted to say about this is the Spruce Dry fly it wasn't designed as a dry fly. It's an adaptation of the light spruce streamer, which one of my favorites of all time. I think I've tied it before once or twice. It's a beautiful streamer, but I think it makes a really cool looking dry fly, kind of in the same category as a Royal Coachman. Of course, it uses a dry fly hook, size 12 to 18. The tail is Badger Hackle fibers. The body is red floss in the rear and then peacock herl in the front. And then the wings are Badger Hackle tips, kind of like on a Adams. And then the hackle is Badger. So change hooks real quick. And we'll go to the materials camera. So the main material here, Jesse's coming in, is Badger Hackle. And it's kind of hard to find Badger Hackle, but you can find it in some of these India necks. And these are very cheap. Definitely a lot cheaper than the high grade hackles of today. So that'll be used for the wings, the tail material, and then also for the hackle. And I have those pre-selected. And then for the thread on this fly, I'm going to just use red thread. But for the body, instead of using floss like you would on the streamer, I'm going to use like a heavier Danville's thread. And then peacock herl for the front. I already selected a couple of peacock herls. So there's my hook. I'm tying this on a size 12, just to kind of make it easier for the camera to give you a good view of it. Mount my reading glasses, and I'm going to start this red thread. This is a 70 denier ultra thread. You could use any finer red thread. On any dry fly, you want to use a lighter thread just to not cause too much bulk and not cause too much weight. I'm just going to get that thread started and then flip it loose. And then for the tail, I'm going to take from the, let me zoom out some here. Oops. From this India neck here, if you come around to the back, some of these, they used to call them spade feathers. Some of these feathers out here to the sides, you see they don't have much color, but they have a lot of stiffness. Most of the color in a badger, the dark color, is where the webby material is. So some of these feathers, this is a good one here. I plucked another one, but it's got some dark tips. It's got a little bit of color in it, but the key is that the barbs are stiffer, so they'd be good for the tail. So I'm going to take this feather here and just kind of stroke those down like that. And I'm going to grab about 9 or 5. I don't know if we have Paul with us tonight. Fibers. And I'm going to measure them to be, I like my tails a little bit long, at least a hook shank. I do almost a full hook. And then with the fibers a little bit on my side, I'm going to wrap that towards the rear. So that thread tension brought that, thread torque brought that right onto the top there. So I'm going to wrap this back, holding those fibers a little bit towards me, like this. And that makes sure they don't wrap around the hook. And I want to wrap back to where I'm at the end of the flat part of the shank, which is normally right above the barb. So right about there. And then I'll flatten my thread by turning it counterclockwise as if I'm looking down on it. And wrap that forward. Now, I was going to use this thicker thread to build the body on it, but this being a smaller hook, I think I may be able to do it with just the thread I'm using. It's basically the same thread. This is a Danville's flat wax nylon, and that would work as well.
Can you zoom in a little bit on that?
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry about that.
Much better. Thank you.
Yep. Okay. So now, at this point, I'm going to work a little bit more on that body. So again, I'm spinning it counterclockwise, and that flattens the thread. Now, as you noticed, as I was wrapping like that, when you wrap like this, that imparts a little bit of twist into the thread every wrap you make. So every once in a while, you need to spin it counterclockwise to flatten the thread back out. And that just gives you a nice smooth body. So as I'm wrapping that, it's putting a clockwise twist into it. So I just spin it counterclockwise. And then you can see that thread is a little bit, you can see more surface area, that it's a little bit flatter. Right now, before I put in the peacock curl for the front part of the body, I'm going to go ahead and put the wings in. Now I selected 2 2 feathers to use for the wings. And kind of what I'm looking for is a little bit wider, a little bit, rounder tips. So the first thing I'm going to do is just kind of strip back, even up the tips. And then I know it's going to be much shorter than this. I'm just going to come to this point and cut that loose. So I'm not dealing with as much feather. So now I have a couple of shorter pieces here. So I'm going to take this back one and I'm going to twist it around so the dull sides are facing each other. And then try to even up those tips. And you can slide your finger and thumb to even that up. See, there it is. And now I want to measure this again. The reason I'm measuring it to the hook shank is if this was a size 16 hook or a size 10 hook, I'm not saying I want a, 1/2-inch wing. I'm saying I want it to be the length of the hook shank. So on each hook, that wing is going to be a little bit longer. So on a larger hook, the wing's going to be longer. On a smaller hook, the wing's going to be shorter, and it's going to be proportional. That's why we measure to the hook instead of actually coming up with, ruler measurements. So I'm going to strip back some of this hackle. And recheck my length. And I'm actually going to tie these in forward. So I want a shank length forward to that tie-in point. And I'm going to do a pinch wrap. So I'm bringing the thread up. I'm setting those hackles down right on top of the hook shank. But then I bring the thread up between my thumb and the hackles, and then around the other side of the hackles of my finger. And then I'm going to pull straight down and then work backwards from that point. Until I have several wraps. And then I'll cut that loose. Now, first thing I'm going to do is get rid of any of those butts and just blend that right into that body. And with hackle, it's not like a hare wing where you have a big step there. I'm going to work this back a little bit and then come back. Where the wing is. Now, I'm going to come up to that wing right in front of it, and I'm going to do some tight wraps right up at the base of that. But I'm kind of coming forward a little bit and making kind of like a cone, if you will, just to stand those wings up. Now, right about, I wouldn't do this at the halfway point of the hook, but a little bit forward of that. I'm going to take a peacock herl, and I know the tip is going to break off because the top 3/4 of an inch or so are pretty fragile. And I'm going to tie this in. If you look at a peacock herl, if you can tell on this one, you've got these little fibers that are sticking down are pretty much straight out from that stem. And these on the top are actually like leaning forward. I want that forward leaning to be on the leading edge when I tie this in. So I'm going to get that, grab that a little closer to the feather. And then tie that in. And then come forward to in front of the wing. So now I'm going to take that peacock herl. Before I do that, I'm going to tie back this peacock herl. I want to do that at a later step. The first thing I need to do is tie in my hackle. So for the hackle, this isn't like using the genetic saddle hackles that are, um, 8-10 inches long and all the same length. You have to look at this feather and, it's kind of, I think Al's referred to it as a Christmas tree. Um, you can see the fibers are much longer here at the base, but again, wherever that black is where the webby portion of the feather is. And you don't want that in your dry fly anyway. So really the usable feather to use this as a dry fly hackle is getting way up here to about halfway up the feather. So I'm going to strip some of this away at that point. Feel free to butt in with questions if you have them along the way. The other thing you're looking for is the stem is real thick down here. And as you come up the feather, it starts to get thinner. But right in here about where it really gets thin, that's where it's going to wrap on your hook nicely. And that's also about the time where the barbs that stick out start to get, all these yellow ones, are definitely stiffer hackle, and these are webby, the black ones in the middle. I do want a little color. I think that looks cool. But so at this point, I'm going to take that hackle feather, come around in back of the wing. And I'm going to tie this in with some of the hackle exposed. You could also, on this leading edge, you could also strip a couple of these away. So I'm going to leave some bare stem that I'm going to lead with. And then I can see that that bud is going to be a little bit too long. I'm going to go ahead and clip it. But tie it down with nice tight wraps. And then I'll wait in the front. Now, I'm going to take this peacock herl and just work it around that hackle for the time being till I can get that forward. So I want a little bit of a peacock herl body here behind where I start the wing. So now I've come up to the base of that hackle, and now I'm going to wrap a couple of wraps behind the wings and then continue forward in front of the wings. Just have to make sure I don't trap anything down there. I'll tie off that peacock herl. And now I'll take my hackle, grab it with the hackle pliers. Am I zoomed in too much, or can everybody see what I'm doing?
Seems good.
That's
Okay,
good,
good.
Mike.
Um, I'm gonna, like I said, leave a little bit of peacock herl behind the wing, and then just start to wrap that hackle forward. Do about 3 wraps behind the wings, maybe 4. One more in there. And then in front of the wings. And I think that black, ooh, I think that black rachis, um, that turned into a disaster. So let me come back. I've got one more hackle that I can use. And I'll do the same thing, tie it in a different way. Right here.
Any rationale for flattening or not flattening the shaft of the quill on that hackle to get it to lay closer or easier?
You have a good point there. I think what I did was I just pulled too hard on the hackle pliers and broke the front of that hackle off. So if I hold that a little more carefully, I shouldn't break the hackle.
Mike, I've never done that before. Pulled too hard.
Yeah, I pull too hard very often. And then a couple in front. And I'm running out of hackle right about the right point. You can see I got very, very little hackle left there. Stroke all that back and tie in a nice little red head. And we'll do some cleanup here in a second. I used to mess with on Adams and other hackle tip wing flies. I used to mess with trying to get thread wraps between them and all that, but really it seems to lay nicer if you just leave them paired together like that. And then once you get the hackle tied on, that will help support those wings. And I know John is saying that this would make a really good Tenkara fly if you tied the hackle forward and took the wings off.
I would never say that.
No, it looks like it's a kielbasa, whatever you call them.
Yeah, there is a Tenkara fly very much like that. Red with peacock pearl. And
Sikasa kabari.
yeah, well, that's they're all called Sakasa Kabaris, but this one is a Takayama Sakasa Kabari, and it's basically a Japanese version of the Royal Coach with the hackle facing forward.
Like I said, I love the streamer with that badger. And I really like this as just a dry fly that has some contrast. Red is a special color, especially for trout. And it's a good generic dry fly. Any questions on that till we get to my other one that I always say is my favorite? Well, any reason. I mean, sometimes you can see a hatch coming and you can say, you know, these are olive colored mayflies, blue winged olives, or these are kind of more of a gray or brown color, and you can kind of match that. But there's sometimes you just want to, you see fish rising, you're not really sure what they're going after. You can put something like this out, or even just to hunt. It's probably more applicable to like, you know, panfish. If you put something like this out in front of panfish, they're going to see that contrasting color, the yellow, red, and green.
I'm a firm believer in the philosophy that if you throw something at the fish that he's never seen before, he's more likely to try and eat it.
There's also a
Where do you get your India hackles?
I got these from Netcraft, Jan's Netcraft.
Okay.
But I think I just got them because I saw some India necks and they had badger.
Yeah.
What I really got these for is more for the longer hackles that are used, like I use for the tips, for the actual light spruce streamer. You know, it's just excellent color, and I've always loved the look of that badger hackle. On the next fly is going to be the Grizzly King, and just like on the last fly, we took a streamer and made it into a dry fly. The Grizzly King is basically, it was popularized as a wet fly, which you see in the upper left corner of this picture here. The wing was actually mallard flank or some kind of duck flank, whether it's teal or gadwall. They're all kind of similar where they have that barred feathers like that. But it was a real popular wet fly. And a lot of people took those wet flies and basically tied them on a 3X or so long hook and made streamers out of them. Now that we have the trout spay and some of these other styles of fishing, a lot of these flies are coming back. The hair wing or feather wing streamers like this that are smaller. You know, in that style of fishing, those kind of flies are pretty effective. So again, with, you know, going with the green and the red Christmas colors, I figured this would be another good one to use. So we'll go back. I did this in a hurry this morning and I didn't do it right. So I'm going to stop that share and go to the materials. So this is again on a 3X long hook. For the tail, I'm going to use red hackle fibers. This is a saddle hackle that's real webby, and that's really good for these streamer tails like that. But I'm also going to kick it up a notch and use some Amherst pheasant crest that's also red. I'm going to stick some of that in there too. That'll maybe curl up at the base of the tail. For the rib, and I'm going to tie a butt on this one, I'm going to use maybe gold side. This tinsel is usually silver on one side, gold on the other. And this is 1618 Mylar tinsel. I don't know the brand of this. But really what I'm looking for on this, a lot of these kind of flies, if you use a fatter tinsel, like, that's not handy. Sometimes it just gets to be too much flash. But I think this really, allows some of the nice color of the body to come through, but it does give it a little bit of flash. For the wings, I'll use a couple of, Grizzly. These are Grizzly hen, hackles. And then I'll also use the same Grizzly for the collar or the throat. And then I'll kind of get into something about using, this rayon floss. Not so much critical on this one, but definitely critical on anything that you use for red or orange or yellow, or any other colors, that might be a little bit lighter. So switch back over to the vise. And I'm actually going to start with a white thread. And the reason for that is when you use tinsel and it gets wet, that tinsel is going to become kind of translucent. And if you're using a black thread and say a yellow, tinsel, or I'm sorry, a yellow floss for the body, it will, discolor that yellow and just make it look like a duller color. So if you're really looking for a certain color, you want to use white as the underbody. And then if you want to have a black head on this fly when we're done, which we'll do today, you can just switch over to black thread at some point there. Grab a nice long piece. Of my tinsel. And I want gold, so I'm going to tie the silver side forward. At least the way I tie this in. Once I start wrapping like this, then it folds over, and then I have the gold side facing out. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm back 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I'll unwrap my thread back to that point, tie it down. The good thing is with that, floss, I have 2 more strands that I didn't use it. So flat thread. Wrap toward the front. Spin it to flatten it out some more. Whoop. And wrap back. Now I'll tie in the tail. Again, thank you, John. Take my hackle tips about half a shank length. Tie them in at that point. Right on top. And since these are nice and long, I'm going to be able to use that to keep my body the same diameter and not have a step. Spin it. Spin it again. So now I have that tail sitting right at the edge of where that gold bud is. And then I said I was going to take that, where'd we go with it? Here it is. Amherst pheasant. Make that about. like
Hey,
that, just to
Mike,
kind
can you zoom back in?
yeah.
Thanks.
Show that
So
amber
this,
a little bit. Is that the yellow or is that a different?
this is red. The golden pheasant is yellow.
Okay.
The Amherst pheasant is red. Same thing. So with that red, just regular hackle underneath it, I'll just put on here just to kick it up in the air a little bit. And then again, just wrap forward with touching turns, tying that stem down. So now that I'm at the front, that nice little kicked up tail there. I'll take those other two floss strands, even up the tips.
You need to put the tinsel in first.
Rib. Okay, got those ready. This is what happens when you don't think you're going to do a presentation until the last minute and you haven't
Well, you got
prepared.
lots of friends out here watching.
Appreciate it. All right. So I want gold side for the rib, so I'm going to take the silver towards me. And this tinsel is so small, it's not going to give any bulk at all. So I don't have a problem tying that in like that. And after you've done enough wraps, you can do touching wraps pretty quick sometimes. All right. Now, back to the floss. Tie it in at the front. And then I'll clip those butts since I didn't. I'll take them around underneath and just, I can feel the fibers kind of crossing in there and everything. Is like silk, little thin fibers. And so now as I wrap this back, every time I do a wrap, I'm just kind of stroking it and flatten those out. Touching turns. Ooh, slow down. You can kind of take your thumb and run it around the hook point. And now we'll go back. There's our green body. And then at this point, I'm going to go ahead and just tie this off. With a couple of wraps. Cut off that floss. Bring my black thread into the picture. And now as I fold this around, yep, I've got the gold side. Wrap that in good. Then I'm going to take a Grizzly soft hackle, isolate the tip, shorten my red base here a little bit, zoom in some. Sorry about that. We're good. And I'll tie in that hackle tip, a couple wraps forward, and then fold it back. Wrap back over it. And then holding my thread tight, I can take that tip and just break it off. Now I'll take this hand hackle and wrap it forward. Stroking it back, do a few good turns there. I want to have a little bit of a bushy throat here. Got that loose. Now I'll just take those hackles and stroke them down like this, and then just take a wrap over that bunch. A couple of wraps. And that just kind of trains everything down toward the underneath. Do another turn over here. Make sure I caught all that. There we go. A little bit in the front that I don't want there. And now for the wing, I've got two, again, Grizzly hen tips. You can use Grizzly saddle hackle as well. These are with the concave sides facing each other, so put them together, it's kind of like, you know, flat like a knife blade. And I want this to go, you know, at least to the tail. So I'm going to mark it right there and then just strip all this stuff forward, off. And I want to tie it in right on top. I'll loose wrap it first just to make sure everything is situated there, and then go tight. See how that lays. A little bit towards me. I want to spin up my thread a little bit. Lay that right on top. And that's better. Make sure that's nice and tight, and then I can cut these stems. And then I'll come back to the eye. Work my way up. Just build a nice smooth head there. Whip finish back toward the eye. Over itself. And that's the Grizzly King Streamer.
Very nice.
Well done, Mike.
Any questions?